Bitfinex, 2016. They were hit with a hack. And in this hack, approximately 120,000 Bitcoins were stolen. As a matter of fact, I did a show on this, episode 46 of the Brett Johnson shows. We can, if you want to, we could do a little flashback right now.
In or around August 2016, a hacker breached Bitfinex's security systems and infiltrated its infrastructure. While inside Bitfinex's network, the hacker was able to initiate over 2,000 unauthorized Bitcoin transactions, in which approximately 119,000 Bitcoins was transferred from Bitfinex to an outside wallet. At the time of this breach, 119,000 coins was valued at approximately $71 million. Due to the increase of value in Bitcoin by February of 2022, it was valued at, those stolen coins were valued at $4.5 billion. U.S. authorities traced the stolen funds on the Bitcoin blockchain. As detailed below, beginning in or around 2017, a portion of the stolen Bitcoins moved out of Wallet 1CGA4S in a series of small, complex transactions across multiple accounts and platforms. This shuffling, which created a voluminous number of transactions, appeared to be designed to conceal the path of the stolen Bitcoins, making it difficult for law enforcement to trace the funds. Despite these efforts, as explained further below, U.S. authorities traced the stolen Bitcoin to multiple accounts controlled by Ilya Lichtenstein, a Russian U.S. national residing in New York, and his wife, Heather Morgan, a.k.a. Razzle Khan.
What happened was 120,000 of these were stolen. They were stolen through a social engineering scheme, an attack. Now, those who have watched me understand that cybercrime works. It's successful primarily because of social engineering. Okay? If you are not a good social engineer, by God, you had better find yourself one, because in order to deploy that ransomware, in order to get someone to click on that phishing link, any number of things, you have to be a good social engineer. You have to convince that person to do that, because most products are fairly secure. It's the human that you look to compromise. So social engineering matters. The attack that hit Bitfinex was a social engineering scheme. It was a phishing attack. The guy got access, the attacker got access to the network, used that as for a lateral move, started getting passwords, got API access, then used that to start moving money or Bitcoin out of wallets. And then also at the same time, obscured his tracks to where no one was able to track who did it. So yes, a social engineering attack, but understand, a sophisticated social engineering attack, an attack that was launched by an attacker who knew what they were doing. And in the two shows that I recorded prior to this, I talk about this, okay? Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan, his wife, they were arrested not for the theft, but for trying to launder the money, okay? So what happens is Ilya, when the Bitcoin was stolen, it was approximately $70 million. When Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan are arrested at an apartment, New York City, that Bitcoin is about $6 billion. Okay, so a huge move. The person who laundered the money, Ilya, if you read through the way that was laundered, and again, we can do a flashback here.
Number 3, utilizing computer programs to automate transactions, a laundering technique which allows for many transactions to take place in a short period of time. That's right. You don't want to do this shit manually if you can avoid it, because you've got 119,000 tokens. There's no way it would take you forever to try to launder that many tokens out. Number 4, layering the stolen funds by depositing them into accounts at a variety of cryptocurrency exchanges and darknet markets, and then withdrawing the funds, which obfuscates the trail of the transaction history by breaking up the fund flow. Again, very legitimate. Number 5, converting the Bitcoin into other forms of virtual currency, typically Monero, in a practice known as chain hopping. And number 6, using U.S.-based business accounts to legitimize the activity.
That was how that was done. Okay, now what was interesting in that is that if you look at the way the money was laundered, it is not an indication that the person who tried to launder it, in this case Ilya and Heather Morgan, that they knew what they were doing. It's like they read a bunch of tutorials and learned that way. So I had this theory on those previous 2 shows, and my theory was, you look at Ilya Lichtenstein's operational security. So OPSEC is what the bad guys call it. I think that's what the good guys call it too. OPSEC is what you have to do as an attacker to remain anonymous, to make sure that you are not tracked, okay? So if you look at the way that he learned OPSEC, or the way that OPSEC was done during that attack and then during the subsequent money laundering, and if you look at the way the money laundering was done, it screams someone that had absolutely no practical experience at all in doing those things. It screams someone who simply read about it online and then tried to do it. That was my theory, okay? Now here's what happens. Those Bitcoin are stolen. Those Bitcoins sit there for a solid year, no movement whatsoever. And then we start to see some of those coins coming out and being laundered at that point in time. The way the laundering done was like a fucking idiot. Ultimately, Ilya cashed out some of those Bitcoin through his personal Coinbase account, using his real name, his real driver's license, everything else. So it's very easy at that point to start tracking this individual. As a matter of fact, it was so goddamn bad that authorities couldn't believe that he was the real guy that did it. Because, hey, no fucking idiot would ever do something like that. Rule number 1 in cybercrime is all crime should begin with identity theft. Why commit a crime under my name if I can do it under your name? Well, he didn't do that. He did it under his name. So he was very inexperienced. So I had that theory. The other theory that I had, looking at the attack itself, Ilya Lichtenstein pled guilty to money laundering. Not only did he plead guilty to money laundering, but he also said that he was the person that stole the money from Bitfinex. In his account of that, and I've got the indictment, and I've got some notes here that we can walk through as well. In that, there's a few things that I find very interesting, and it begins on page 5 of his testimony, not his indictment, but of his testimony against Roman Sterlingov. So Roman Sterlingov was the guy who ran Bitcoin Fog, and Bitcoin Fog is a Bitcoin money launderer. Let's backtrack. All right, if you are stealing Bitcoin, or you're committing some sort of criminal act and getting paid in Bitcoin, or you've got some sort of illegal Bitcoin, something Bitcoin that you've got is related to criminal activity, you cannot send that bullshit over to Coinbase and cash it out, because Coinbase tracks that wallet and they see every transaction on that wallet with that Bitcoin, and they're able to determine, oh, this Bitcoin specifically right here came from the Mt. Gox theft, or it came from these phishing schemes, or it came from this ransomware attack. So they're able to see that, and they immediately lock down that fucking account. So you have to wash the Bitcoin. You have to make that Bitcoin look clean. And in order to do that, there are several, or used to be, there were several different type of washers out there. Bitcoin Fog was one of them. All right. There's been several over the years, and a lot of those people who ran those, who created them, have been indicted and given a lot of time. Roman Sterlingov was a Russian, a Swedish Russian, who started Bitcoin Fog and laundered 1.2 million Bitcoins. And the way it works is, think of it as a big bag. All right. So you're wanting to make your Bitcoin clean. So you send your Bitcoin, they put it in that bag with everyone else's Bitcoin. They shake the shit out of it, mix it all up, and then they distribute your Bitcoin back. So your Bitcoin is mixed with everyone else's Bitcoin, and it becomes obfuscated as to where those coins came from. It becomes very difficult to start trying to track them down. You can do it, but it becomes very difficult to do that. Turns out that shit's illegal. That's money laundering. So what happens is Ilya pleads guilty to Bitfinex. He also says, I was the guy who stole the coins. and he agrees to be a government witness so that he can get some time off. Now, how much time was he looking at? Well, the statute says up to 20 years. His PSR, pre-sentence report. So what happens is when you go through the legal system and federal authorities, before you are sentenced, the probation office and the prosecutor's office, they sit down and they do this in-depth background check. It recommends to the judge how much time you should get for those charges. In Ilya's case, they're recommending 10 to 12 years. In Heather Morgan's case, 5 to 10. 5 is what she's going to get. But most of that will be on home confinement, some bullshit like that. All right, so that's where we're standing there. Now Ilya also agreed to testify against anybody they wanted him to testify against. So they bring him in to testify against Roman Sterlingov, who was indicted. He's getting sentenced, I think, August of this year. He's going to get a shit ton of time. He's going to get probably 25, 30 years is what he's going to get because he's Russian. Nobody gives a shit about him, and people are really trying to send a message on all these crypto scams that are going around. So he's going to get a boatload of time. In Ilya's testimony against Sterlingov, the prosecutor, I want to take you back to the early 2010s or so. What were you doing at that time? Ilya responds, I was an entrepreneur. I started a tech company. So you started a tech company. Did you have any tech background? Yeah, I taught myself to code and IT and things like that. So he says, were you a computer science major in college? No, I studied psychology in college. Now, here's the thing. He went to Northwestern. Yeah. So he was all right. He didn't have to choose to go into crime. It wasn't like he was disenfranchised or poor or in some ethnic neighborhood where the only fucking way to get out was committing crime. No, he wasn't. His dad, Eugene Lichtenstein, was this bigwig that came over from Russia with his family claiming religious persecution. That is code for, well, he's FSB. For those who don't know, FSB is what the KGB moved over to when the wall fell. So yeah, he absolutely has connections with FSB. So Eugene comes over. Eugene becomes a mortgage broker for real estate and makes a shit ton of money. He does very well. Ilya goes to Northwestern for psychology. So we'll continue here. Question. During that time that you started the tech company, did you meet Miss Morgan, his future wife, who you testified about yesterday? Yes. At some point while you were working at this tech company, did you become aware of cryptocurrency? And he goes through that. Yes, I did. That's where I first learned of cryptocurrency was in the 2010s. Okay. Page 6, did you purchase some? Yeah. And he says, did you use any type of drugs? And he says, well, I went to darknet markets and several times for personal use. I purchased psychedelic drugs, so primarily mushrooms and LSD. Now, for those who have watched my show, you know that Brady is not a druggie. I do enjoy a bottle of champagne about once a month, and I'm the only one in the house that drinks. So I down a bottle, and I'm like, yeah, I'll put on like Mad Max or something like that. Go, yeah, or The Thing, John Carpenter. I do shit like that. All right, so Ilya liked his psychedelics. I've not used mushrooms, not used LSD, anything like that. So he liked to buy psychedelic drugs from the dark web. Prosecutor, how were you able to get onto these markets? What browser did you use? I used a Tor browser. And then the prosecutor branches off into something else. How was your business doing 2013, 2014? There was an objection to that. So he says, at some point, did you decide you wanted to hack something? Ilya responds, yes. Prosecutor, can you briefly explain what it means to hack something? Ilya responds, to gain unauthorized access to a computer system and to obtain data from it. If you have been in cybersecurity, law enforcement, on the cybersecurity angle of law enforcement for any length of time, that answer should raise a flag. It should scream to you, well, he's been coached or he's read that online, because yeah, that is a textbook definition of hack, but that's not really the end definition. You want to go on to explain that. And that's one of the things that happens during this testimony with Ilya, is he will say something like he's been coached to say it, like he's read it online, but he's not able to really dive in and explain what that actually means. And I want to go through some of this testimony to illustrate what I'm talking about. Question, do you know what Bitfinex is? Well, he should. He just pled guilty a few months prior to this testimony. He says, yes, it is a cryptocurrency exchange. Did you decide to hack Bitfinex? Answer, yes, I did. Question, why? Ilya, I mean, at the time, I think my business was struggling and I was feeling very burned out from it. And I felt very selfish. I felt like I didn't really care about anyone else. I just wanted to get mine. I wanted to access the cryptocurrency on it. I wanted to make some money. A lot of people that listen to my show, a lot of people who have read the news of Ilya or the FTX guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, if you've not been through the court system before, an answer like this might come off as very truthful. It's not. This answer is exactly what you're supposed to say to accept responsibility in front of the judge. See, when you plead guilty in the federal system, the acceptance, it's called acceptance of responsibility. You make that statement, and then you get 3 points off of your sentencing. So what happens in federal sentencing, it's not like the judge just looks at you and says, I don't like this son of a bitch. I'm going to give him 30 fucking years. You're going to rot behind bars, you piece of filth. It's not like that. What happens is they look at the charge, and then they look at the number of past criminal charges that you've got, the dollar amount and the victim, and they cross everything over, and it comes up with a number, a range. You know, he's supposed to serve 108 to 120 months is the range, all right? So you get so many points on that. If you accept responsibility, they take 3 points off, so you get less time at the end of the day. This answer that he gave is exactly, you can go through any number of plea hearings, and this is almost word for word what criminals say in front of a judge. And where do they get that? Their fucking lawyer tells them this is what you're supposed to say. Don't say anything fucking else. Say that. If you say anything fucking else, you're not going to get your fucking time off. Do you understand? And then you're going to have to spend your Sundays avoiding anal rape. So they put the fear of God into you, and you tend to say that. So that's what Ilya says. Were you able to eventually access cryptocurrency on Bitfinex that did not belong to you? Ilya, yes. Question, how were you able to do that? Ilya, it was over a period of a few months. I was able to access one server that Bitfinex used, and then used that to gain access to other servers and to credentials that would allow me to transfer cryptocurrency out of that exchange. What the fuck does that mean? Because that's what he says. All right, that's what he says, and we're going to go through some more of that in a second. But I want you to bear this in mind. Ilya decides in 2016 or late 2015, he decides that he wants to be a hacker. The first hack that he did was Bitfinex. The first hack that he did. He stole 120,000 Bitcoins. And he says the way that he did it is it was over a period of a few months. I was able to access one server that Bitfinex used and then use that to gain access to other servers and to credentials that would allow me to transfer cryptocurrency out of that exchange. Not really saying much. You're talking a lot, but I got this saying where I say, hey, you're like the whitest guy on earth who says all this shit but doesn't really say anything. That's what Ilya's doing right now. Prosecutor, at some point, did you gain access to other customers of Bitfinex, their wallets, etc. on Bitfinex? Answer, I gained access to a lot of wallets on Bitfinex, yes. Question, and then what did you do once you got into those wallets? Answer, I created a script to automatically transfer the funds for those wallets into my wallets that I controlled. Question, how long were you on Bitfinex on the inside able to do that? Answer, throughout kind of the whole process, I had access to their systems for several months, but I didn't have access to the credentials for their cryptocurrency for that whole time. Question, so for how long were you able to have access to those credentials? Ilya says, well, once I started transferring it, I let it run, and it was throughout maybe a few hours. Prosecutor asks, were you able to later access Bitfinex customer resources at other exchanges as a result of the hack? And Ilya says, yes. So what the prosecutors ask there, so you were able to get the passwords and then use the passwords from Bitfinex to try to log in to other cryptocurrency exchanges, use the credentials that were stolen from Bitfinex to log into other cryptocurrency exchanges and steal the Bitcoin from there. And Ilya says, yes. So this is an example of credential stuffing. And credential stuffing works because 80%, 80 fucking idiot percent of the entire world population uses the same or similar login credentials across multiple networks, across multiple websites. So that's why credential stuffing is so successful. To this day, it's that successful. Question from prosecutor. Were you able to recover money from there as well? Ilya, from some of them, yes. Prosecutor, and the form of the cryptocurrency, it was all Bitcoin. Yes. How much Bitcoin were you able to recover as a result of the hack? Ilya, about 120,000 Bitcoin. You know, if it were me, I'd smile. I'd give this big shit-eating possum grin all of a sudden. I don't know what he did. But that's what I would do because, hell, I've already pled guilty. It's not like they're going to fucking do anything to me as I'm testifying against this guy. How much Bitcoin? 120,000. Prosecutor, did you have a sense of how much this 120,000 Bitcoin was worth in August of 2016? Ilya says, yeah, about $70 million. And just to be complete, did you also hack some money from an exchange called Paycoin? Ilya says, yes, at an earlier time for a small amount of money. Do you know what operational security is? Yes, operational security. Now, here's what's becoming interesting. Remember my theory that Ilya laundering the money and his operational security for laundering the money, it was like he had read a shitload of tutorials online and had never really done any of it. That was my theory almost 2 fucking years ago. That was my theory because it turns out Brett Johnson knows what the fuck he's talking about when he looks at this shit. I am not the only person that knows what I'm talking about. The DOJ knows what's going on here too. Make no mistake about that. They know exactly what's going on. And I want you to bear this in mind, that Ilya, with these answers, the DOJ, if they were to look any farther past just the superficial of this, they would be able to see that, this shit just does not sound right at all.